What happens when one of Hollywood's most private actors sits down with one of television's most outspoken hosts? You're about to find out. And trust me, this is not how anyone expected this interview to go. Before we get into it, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me what you think about what's about to unfold. Now, let's dive in. The studio lights were bright as Mark Harmon settled into his chair on The View. The audience applauded warmly, clearly excited to see the former NCIS star who rarely made talk show appearances. Whoopi Goldberg smiled and gestured toward him. Whoopi started things off. "Mark, it is so good to have you here. You know, you don't do a lot of these interviews, so we're really happy you made time for us today." Harmon nodded with that trademark calm demeanor he was known for. "Well, I appreciate the invitation. It's good to be here." Sarah N. jumped in next. "We have to talk about NCIS 19 seasons playing Leroy Jethro Gibbs. That's an incredible run. What made you finally decide it was time to step away from the role?" Harmon leaned back slightly, measuring his words carefully. "You know, there comes a time when you feel like you've told the story you set out to tell. Gibbs had a great arc, and I felt like we reached a natural conclusion. It wasn't an easy decision, but it felt right." Sonny Hostin nodded along, and the fans were devastated. "I mean, you were the heart of that show for so long. Do you miss it?" "I miss the people," Harmon said, honestly. "The cast, the crew, they became family. But I don't miss the schedule. 18-hour days, that takes a toll after almost 2 decades. The conversation was flowing smoothly, comfortable even, but then Joy Behar shifted in her seat, and there was something in her expression that suggested she was about to take things in a different direction. "Mark, I want to ask you something," Joy said, her tone changing slightly. "You've been very quiet about politics over the years. Very quiet. And in this day and age, when we have so much division in this country, when we have real threats to democracy, don't you think people in your position have a responsibility to speak up?" The shift in the room was immediate. Harmon's expression didn't change much, but there was a subtle tension in his jaw. "I think everyone has a right to their opinions, Joy. I've just never felt the need to use my platform that way." Joy pressed forward. "But that's the thing, isn't it? You have millions of fans, people who respect you, and you choose to stay silent. Some might say that's a privilege not everyone has." Harmon stayed measured. "I would say that respecting people's intelligence enough to let them form their own opinions without celebrity influence is also a valid choice. I'm an actor, not a politician." Whoopi tried to step in. "I think what Joy is getting at," but Joy wasn't finished. "No, what I'm getting at is that we're living in dangerous times. We just went through an election cycle, we're dealing with real issues about voting rights, about women's rights, and people who have a voice. They need to use it. Silence can be complicity." "Mark." There was an uncomfortable pause. The audience was quiet now, sensing the tension building on stage. Harmon took a breath before responding. "Joy, I respect your passion on these issues. I really do. But I don't agree that staying out of the political arena makes someone complicit. I think what's dangerous is this idea that everyone needs to pick a side publicly and shout about it. Whatever happened to private conviction, to voting with your conscience without making it a performance?" Joy's expression hardened. "A performance? So you think those of us who speak out are performing?" "That's not what I said," Harmon replied, his voice still calm but with an edge creeping in. "I'm saying that public declarations aren't the only form of civic engagement. I vote, I support causes I believe in. I just don't feel the need to announce it all on social media or in interviews." Joy leaned forward. "But when you played a federal agent for 19 years, when you were the face of law enforcement on television, don't you think that comes with some responsibility? Especially now, when we're having real conversations about police reform and accountability." Now Sarah N. looked uncomfortable, and Sonny Hostin was glancing between Joy and Mark with concern. Whoopi was clearly trying to figure out how to steer this back to safer ground. Harmon's voice remained steady, but there was steel in it now. "Joy, Leroy Jethro Gibbs was a fictional character. He wasn't real, and the show addressed plenty of complex issues over the years, including law enforcement accountability. But I'm not going to apologize for playing a character who represented integrity and honor. Those are values that transcend politics." Joy wasn't backing down. "But representation matters, Mark. And when the only representation of law enforcement that millions of people see is noble and heroic, without showing the real problems, the systemic issues, NCIS was a drama, not a documentary." Harmon interrupted, his patience clearly wearing thin. "We told stories. We entertained people. And yes, we showed flawed characters dealing with difficult situations. But it wasn't our job to be a political statement." The temperature in the studio had risen considerably. What started as a standard interview had turned into something else entirely, and everyone could feel it. Joy shook her head. "I just think it's interesting that you're so defensive about this." Harmon's eyes narrowed slightly. "I'm not defensive, Joy. I'm simply disagreeing with your premise that my career choices require your political approval." And that's when things really started to escalate. Whoopi tried once more to intervene. "Okay, I think we can all agree that people have different approaches to." Joy cut her off. No, Whoopi, I want to finish this point. Mark, you say you're not defensive, but you came on this show knowing we talk about real issues. We don't just do puff pieces here. So if you didn't want to engage with these questions, maybe this wasn't the right place for you. The audience gasped quietly. Even for The View, known for its heated debates, this felt like it was crossing a line. You could see Sarah N. biting her lip, clearly wishing she could disappear. Harmon's posture changed. He sat up straighter, and his voice, while still controlled, had a sharp edge to it now. Joy, I came here because I was told this would be a conversation about my career. Maybe some light topics, a few laughs. I didn't come here to be lectured about my civic responsibilities by someone who doesn't know anything about what I do privately or what causes I support. Joy's eyebrows shot up. Oh, so now I'm lecturing you. I'm asking you legitimate questions that I think a lot of people want answers to. No, Harmon said firmly. You're making assumptions and judgments about my character based on the fact that I don't perform my politics for public consumption the way you do. There's a difference between asking questions and prosecuting someone for not thinking the way you think they should. Sonny Hostin attempted to jump in. I think maybe we're all getting a little heated here. Let's take a breath. But Joy was on a roll. Now, Mark, I have spent decades using my platform to fight for things I believe in. Civil rights, women's rights, LGBTQ rights. I don't apologize for that. And when I see someone with your level of influence choosing to stay silent, yes, I'm going to ask about it. That's my job. Harmon leaned forward now, his calm facade cracking. Your job is to interview guests, Joy, not to interrogate them about why they don't meet your personal standards of activism. I have spent my entire career trying to do good work, treat people with respect, and live my life with integrity. I don't need to post about it on Twitter or make speeches at awards shows for it to count. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. The audience was completely silent now, watching this unfold like a car crash they couldn't look away from. Joy's voice rose slightly. But that's exactly the problem. Mark, this idea that you can just do good work and treat people with respect, and that's enough. It's not enough anymore. Not when we have real fascism rising in this country, not when we have politicians trying to take away basic human rights. Staying quiet isn't neutral, it's a choice. Harmon's jaw clenched. And making everything about politics, reducing every conversation to who's on the right side and who's on the wrong side. That's also a choice. Joy, it's exhausting, and frankly, it's part of why this country is so divided. Because people like you can't just have a conversation without turning it into a political litmus test. You could see Whoopi closing her eyes briefly, knowing this had gone too far. Sarah was frozen in her seat. Sunny looked like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Joy's face flushed red. People like me. People like me who actually care about something beyond their own careers and bank accounts. That did it. Harmon's voice, which had been rising gradually, came out with barely controlled anger. That is completely out of line. You don't know me, Joy. You don't know what I care about. You don't know what I do with my time or my money. And you certainly don't have the right to sit there and question my integrity because I won't perform my beliefs for your approval. Joy shot back immediately. I'm not questioning your integrity, I'm questioning your courage. There's a difference. The words hung in the air like a bomb that had just detonated. Harmon stared at Joy for a long moment, and you could see him making a decision. His expression shifted from anger to something closer to disgust. You know what? Harmon said, his voice dangerously quiet now. I've spent 19 years playing a character who valued honor, loyalty, and respect. Who understood that you can disagree with people without attacking their character. Gibbs would never sit here and let someone disrespect him the way you just disrespected me. Joy scoffed. Oh, so now you're going to hide behind a fictional character. Harmon stood up. The movement was sudden enough that it startled everyone on the panel. I'm not hiding behind anything. I'm done with this conversation. This isn't an interview, it's an ambush, and I don't have to sit here and take it. Whoopi's eyes went wide. Mark, come on, let's just. But Harmon was already reaching for his microphone pack. Whoopi, I have nothing but respect for you, and Sarah, and Sunny. But this, he gestured toward Joy. This is exactly what's wrong with our discourse right now. The self-righteousness, the assumption that anyone who doesn't agree with you must be morally deficient. I won't be part of it. Joy stood up to now, her voice rising. So you're just going to run away. That's your response. To walk off when someone challenges you. Harmon turned to face her directly, and his voice was ice cold. You didn't challenge me, Joy. You insulted me. You questioned my courage, my integrity, and my values based on nothing but your own assumptions and biases. That's not challenging someone. That's bullying them. And I spent enough time in my career standing up to bullies, both real and fictional, to know when I'm dealing with one. The audience was completely stunned. Some people had their hands over their mouths. Others were looking at each other in disbelief. This was not how anyone expected this interview to go. Joy's face was bright red now. How dare you call me a bully? I am asking you legitimate questions about your role as a public figure. No, Harmon said firmly, disconnecting his microphone completely now. You were trying to shame me into conforming to your worldview. There's a difference. Whoopi was standing now too, trying desperately to salvage something. Okay, everyone, let's just take a moment here. Mark, please, sit back down. We can work through this. But Harmon was already moving toward the edge of the stage. I appreciate the invitation, Whoopi. I really do. But I think it's best if I leave now before this gets any worse. Joy, perhaps realizing she'd pushed too far, or perhaps just doubling down, called after him. This is ridiculous. You're proving my point right now. You can't handle a tough conversation. Harmon stopped at the edge of the stage and turned back one more time. His voice was steady now, but there was genuine disappointment in it. Joy, a tough conversation involves mutual respect and good faith. What you did here was neither of those things. You made assumptions about who I am, what I believe, and what I do with my life based on the fact that I don't broadcast my every thought and action on social media. You decided before I even sat down that my privacy was somehow a moral failing. That's not journalism, that's not even activism. That's just arrogance. Joy threw her hands up. Unbelievable. So asking you to use your platform for good is arrogance now. Telling me that my way of living my life is wrong because it doesn't match yours. Yes, that's arrogance. Harmon replied, I've never once told you that you're wrong for being vocal about your beliefs. I respect that about you, even when I disagree. But you can't extend that same courtesy to me. Everything has to be your way or it's not good enough. Sarah N. finally found her voice. Mark, I think maybe we all just got a little passionate here. These are important topics and emotions run high. Harmon's expression softened slightly when he looked at Sarah. I appreciate that, Sarah. I really do. And you're right, these are important topics. But there's a way to discuss them that doesn't involve attacking someone's character. Joy crossed that line when she questioned my courage. Sunny nodded carefully. I think that's fair. Maybe we could start over, have a more productive conversation about no, Harmon said, shaking his head. I appreciate the attempt, Sunny, but I think the damage is done here. When someone shows you who they are, you should believe them. And Joy just showed me that she's more interested in scoring points and making me look bad than having an actual conversation. Joy's voice was sharp. That is not true. I was asking questions that needed to be asked. You were performing, Harmon countered. For the audience, for the cameras. You saw an opportunity to go after someone who you assumed would be an easy target because I'm not used to this kind of combative interview style. But here's the thing, Joy, I've dealt with difficult situations and difficult people my entire career. I've just chosen to handle them with grace and dignity, something you might want to consider. The audience was completely riveted. Some people were nodding along with Harmon, others looked conflicted. A few seemed to be on Joy's side. The producers must have been having a meltdown in the control room, but the cameras kept rolling. Whoopi tried one more time. Mark, I really think if we just take a commercial break, we can come back and… Whoopi, with all due respect. No, Harmon interrupted gently. This isn't something a commercial break can fix. Joy made it very clear what she thinks of me and people like me who choose to keep their political beliefs private. She thinks we're cowards. She said so. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that didn't happen or that we can just move past it with some light banter about my next project. Joy crossed her arms. I didn't call you a coward. You questioned my courage, Harmon said evenly. Same thing. And you know what the sad part is? I actually came here today thinking this might be enjoyable. I've watched your show, I know. You all have different perspectives and you're not afraid to debate. I respected that, but there's a difference between debate and ambush, and you ambushed me. Joy's voice rose again. Oh please, I asked you about your silence on important issues. If that's an ambush to you, then maybe you're not as tough as you think you are. Harmon's eyes narrowed. There it is again. The personal attacks disguised as political discourse. You can't help yourself, can you? You have to make it personal. Have to question my character, my toughness, my courage. All because I won't give you the soundbite you want. Sarah looked like she was on the verge of tears. Guys, please, this is getting really ugly. It got ugly the moment Joy decided I was the enemy, Harmon said. And that's what's wrong with all of this. Anyone who doesn't think exactly like you, who doesn't express themselves exactly the way you do, they're the enemy. They're not good enough. They're cowards, or they're complicit, or they're part of the problem. There's no room for nuance, no room for different approaches to the same goals. It's exhausting and it's destructive. Whoopi closed her eyes and took a deep breath. I hear what you're saying, Mark, and I think there's some validity to it. But Joy has a right to ask tough questions. Asking tough questions is fine, Harmon said. I've answered plenty of tough questions in my career, but there's a way to do it that doesn't involve impugning someone's character. Joy didn't just ask me about my silence, she judged me for it. She decided that my choice to keep my private life private was a moral failing. That's not asking a tough question, that's making an accusation. Joy shook her head vigorously. I stand by everything I said. In this climate, with everything happening in this country, people with platforms need to speak up, period. If that makes you uncomfortable, Mark, then maybe you should examine why. Harmon let out a humorless laugh. And there it is, the circular logic. If I defend my right to privacy, it proves I'm wrong. If I push back against your accusations, it proves I'm defensive. There's no way to win with you, Joy, because you've already decided you're right and I'm wrong. That's not a conversation, that's a sermon, and I didn't come here to be preached at. The audience was murmuring now, reactions split. Some people were applauding quietly, others were shaking their heads. This had become less of an interview, and more of a public airing of grievances about the entire culture of political discourse. Sonny spoke up, trying to be diplomatic. I think what we're seeing here is a really fundamental disagreement about what responsibility comes with being a public figure, and maybe that's worth exploring more thoughtfully. I'd be happy to explore it thoughtfully, Harmon said, but that requires both parties approaching it in good faith. Joy has made it clear she's not interested in that. She's interested in proving a point, and I'm not going to be her prop. Joy's voice was dripping with sarcasm now. Oh, you're a victim now. Mark Harmon, one of the highest paid actors on television. You're a victim. I never said I was a victim, Harmon replied, his patience clearly at its absolute limit. But I am someone who deserves basic respect, and you haven't shown me any. You've talked down to me, you've made assumptions about my values and my character, and you've done it all with this air of moral superiority that's frankly offensive. Whoopi put her face in her hands briefly, before looking up. Okay, I think we need to end this segment. Mark, are you absolutely certain you want to leave? Harmon nodded. I am. I think staying here and continuing this would be a mistake for everyone involved. Joy has made her position clear, and I've made mine clear. There's nothing productive that can come from continuing this. Joy wasn't ready to let it go. So you're just going to storm off set like a child throwing a tantrum. That was the final straw. Harmon's expression went completely cold. A child throwing a tantrum. That's what you think this is? Joy, a child throwing a tantrum is what you've been doing this entire interview. You couldn't handle the fact that I wouldn't fall in line with your worldview, so you attacked me. You questioned my courage, my integrity, my values, and when I defended myself, you doubled down. That's not adult behavior. That's the behavior of someone who can't tolerate disagreement. Joy stood up fully now, her voice loud. I asked you legitimate questions about your role as a public figure, and you couldn't handle it. That's what happened here. No, Harmon said forcefully. You tried to shame me into conforming to your political expectations, and when I refused, you insulted me. That's what happened here, and everyone watching knows it. You can spin it however you want for your audience, but the tape doesn't lie. The audience was in an uproar now, some people applauding, others gasping, everyone talking over each other. Whoopi was trying to restore order, but it was chaos. Sarah N. had tears in her eyes. I just want to say that this is not what we intended when we invited you here. Mark, I'm so sorry this happened. Harmon's expression softened when he looked at her. Sarah, you have nothing to apologize for. You didn't do anything wrong. This is between me and Joy. And honestly, it's probably something that needed to happen. Because this, he gestured at the set, this is a microcosm of what's wrong with our entire national conversation right now. We can't disagree anymore without it becoming personal. We can't have different approaches without one side calling the other side morally bankrupt. Sonny nodded slowly. I think that's a really important point, actually, and maybe something we need to reflect on as a show. Joy was having none of it. Oh please, don't act like you're taking some brave stand here, Mark. You're running away from a conversation you don't want to have. Harmon turned to face Joy one last time. Joy, I've been here for 20 minutes being talked down to, insulted, and judged by someone who doesn't know me. I've defended myself with more patience and grace than you deserved. I'm not running away from anything. I'm choosing not to participate in your performance anymore. There's a difference. Joy's voice was shaking with anger now. My performance, everything I do on this show is genuine. I believe in what I say. I don't doubt that you believe it, Harmon said. That's what makes it so sad. You genuinely believe that your way is the only way, that anyone who doesn't think like you is wrong, or cowardly, or complicit. You've wrapped yourself in your righteousness so tightly that you can't see how alienating and divisive you're being. Whoopi stood up and put her hand on Joy's shoulder. Joy, maybe we should, but Joy shrugged her off. No, Whoopi, he doesn't get to come on our show, refuse to answer questions, and then lecture me about divisiveness. That's not how this works. Harmon actually laughed, but there was no humor in it. I answered your questions, Joy. I just didn't give you the answers you wanted. I told you that I keep my political beliefs private, that I vote, that I support causes I believe in, but that I don't feel the need to broadcast it all publicly. That's a legitimate position, but it wasn't good enough for you because it didn't fit your narrative. The audience was completely divided now. You could hear arguments breaking out in different sections. Some people were chanting for Harmon to stay, others were defending Joy. It was absolute pandemonium. Whoopi raised her voice. Okay, everyone, please, let's all just calm down for a second. But there was no calming this down. The tension had reached a breaking point, and everyone knew it. Joy pointed her finger at Harmon. You know what your problem is, Mark. You want all the benefits of fame and success, but you don't want any of the responsibility that comes with it. You want people to watch your show, buy your products, support your career, but when we ask you to use that platform for something meaningful, you hide behind privacy. Harmon's voice was like steel. My problem, Joy, is that I'm sitting across from someone who thinks she has the moral authority to determine what's meaningful and what's not. Who thinks that her definition of using a platform is the only valid one? Who can't conceive of the idea that someone might be doing good in the world without making sure everyone knows about it? Sarah was openly crying now. Sunny looked shell-shocked. Whoopi seemed torn between trying to defend her co-host and acknowledging that this had spiraled completely out of control. Joy's face was bright red. I have spent my entire career fighting for things that matter. I'm not going to apologize for holding public figures accountable. Accountable for what? Harmon shot back. For not thinking exactly like you, for not performing their politics the way you think they should. That's not accountability, Joy, that's authoritarianism. It's the idea that there's only one acceptable way to be, and if you deviate from it, you deserve to be publicly shamed. Joy threw her hands up. This is insane. I asked you about using your platform, and you're comparing me to an authoritarian. I'm comparing your mentality to authoritarianism, Harmon clarified. The idea that conformity is required, that dissent is unacceptable, that everyone needs to get in line or be labeled an enemy. That's authoritarian thinking, Joy, and it's dangerous no matter which side of the political spectrum it comes from. Whoopi stepped between them. All right, that's enough. Mark, I think it's best if you do leave now. This has gone way too far. Harmon nodded. I agree completely. Whoopi, again, I appreciate you trying to keep this civil. Sarah, Sunny, it was nice meeting you both, even under these circumstances. He turned to walk away, and Joy couldn't resist one more parting shot. Run away, Mark. That's what people like you do when things get uncomfortable. Harmon stopped and turned back slowly. His voice was quiet, but it carried across the entire studio. Joy, I've been a Marine. I've spent 19 years playing one on television, and I've spent a lifetime trying to embody the values that character represented. Honor, courage, commitment. I'm not running from anything. I'm walking away from toxicity. And if you can't see the difference, then I genuinely feel sorry for you. With that, Mark Harmon walked off the view set, leaving behind a stunned audience, shaken hosts, and one very angry Joy Behar. The cameras kept rolling as Whoopi tried desperately to bring the show back under control. But everyone knew this was a moment that would be talked about for a long time. What had started as a routine celebrity interview had turned into a full-blown public confrontation about political discourse, celebrity responsibility, and the limits of civil disagreement. Mark Harmon had come to promote his career and ended up making a statement about respecting different approaches to civic engagement. Joy Behar had tried to hold him accountable and ended up exposing the very divisiveness she claimed to fight against. The fallout from this interview would be immediate and intense. Social media would explode with reactions. News outlets would dissect every word, and both Harmon and Behar would face criticism and support in equal measure. But in that moment, as Harmon disappeared from the stage and the show cut to a very awkward commercial break, one thing was clear. This was a conversation that had needed to happen, even if it happened in the most explosive way possible. So what do you think about this whole situation? Do you think Mark Harmon was right to walk off, or should he have stayed and continued the conversation? Drop your comments below and make sure you subscribe for more stories like this. What would you have done if you were in Mark Harmon's position?